Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another recap video. There weren't many setups for me this week. The ones that did actually set up didn't actually play out as expected, and the ones that there were some that did set up that I didn't get an opportunity to enter, which actually did play out, which is, it's always annoying. But that's the way of the market. You can't really be on the charts for 24 hours of the day, right? So I'll just start with my journal over here. So I'll actually start with a trade that I closed off, well, that got stopped out, that I took last week, which was the AUDCAD. This was that daily trade that kind of walked through in the last video. So this was a trade at the time of entering. It was a simple trade, break and retest of this daily structural level. Broke above, came back, retested. In hindsight, well, I don't know. Well, I'll talk you guys through the trade, right? So, and this was the trade, I believe, at the time that it was stopped out. Cool. So there you go, right? So we just had this big bearish engulfing candle that just wiped out all this price action here, and then on the very next candle, trade stopped out. So I'll just jump to the chart quickly. AUDCAD. So in hindsight, if I just get rid of this trend line for a bit. Okay, so structurally we've been making higher highs, higher lows, right? So we've been, we've got your low, your high, your low, your high, your low, your high, right? All making higher highs, higher lows. At this point here, right on this pullback just here, when it first kind of came into the level, this was a lower low than this low, right? So we already broke structure at this point. And normally, if that happens like it did here, so where we had this was a previous low here, we had structure break, it then pushed up, retested kind of this level, and then we broke back above, right? Forming this kind of W formation. Just here, I was kind of expecting the same thing, right? So we had the structure break, kind of pushed up, it came down, right? So it came down here, right here, and I was expecting that W formation to push off, right? And technically that is still valid for me. I would still take this setup, but in the future, I'm gonna manage it a little bit differently, right? So I'll just put my trend line back in. And I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? There's no way I could have possibly seen this, but there's also this trend line here. If you just connect this low to this low and kind of pull it into the future, you see that price respected that trend line there. And this, so this was the origination, it broke through, it tested as resistance. At that point, we wouldn't really know that this is resistance. Kind of formed the beginnings of that W formation and broke back above, and this was where that trend line for me would have been established, right? Connecting support with resistance, resistance with support, and then pulling it into the future. But I kind of just thought this level that I pulled in would be respected, and I think it's a trade I'll take over and over again. But as I say, I think I'll just manage it a little bit differently. Going into this trade, I didn't really like the way that this trend line was broken. It was broken very impulsively. It didn't even pull back to retest it. So, this is for me, this is a quite bearish move. So, I kind of, as I say, right, hindsight's 2020. But, on looking at this again, maybe I should have seen that the bears were in control at the time, and gone in a little bit more cautiously. But I still think it's a trade I'll take over and over again, and I'll just manage it a little bit differently. So by manage it a little bit differently, if we just look at this W formation here, right? So we had that push down, form the low, breaking structure. So we formed that low, breaking the structure here. It pushed up, formed a higher low, and then immediately on the next move, it broke back above this low here, right? So broke back above the low, completing that sort of W formation, right? I mean, yes, we did have that retracement and then it pushed on. So if we were to look at it in a similar fashion here, so we have, you know, you have your structure being broken on this impulse. So right, it broke the low structure, it pulled up, it formed the lower low, but on the very next opportunity, it failed to break back above that structure level. So that for me was the first, that should have been the first indication that this is not going to continue. And that's why I have these levels drawn in here, right? So if I just jump to the 1 hour time frame, actually I'll just jump to the H4 time frame, it might be a little bit clearer. So this is that low on the day, that structure low on the daily that was broken, right? This is the leg that broke that structure low. It pushed up, it formed the what I thought would have been the beginning of that W formation, and on the very next push I would have liked to see this structure been broken, right? Broken back above. But you can see if I just draw it in here, right, you could see quite clearly it rejected the level. It tried to push up again and rejected it again. So I actually looked at the chart right at this point in time, and I still decided not to close the trade. I should have closed the trade after this kind of evening star formation here on the 1 hour time frame. So we have that bearish pattern being formed just there in the form of the evening star. But for some reason I just decided, I kind of, you know, just decided to hold on to the position, and I don't really know why. So, you know, it's a little bit of poor management on my part. I could have saved myself this loss and just closed off on break even. But, you know, I guess, you know, my psychology has kind of been playing up with me, because just a little bit, because, you know, it's been a while since I've been able to actually close off a winning position, right? So, you know, it's been, I guess 3 weeks, right? So we have, you know, only the first week of the month was profitable for me. I didn't trade the second week of the month, and then third week was just kind of losses and break evens, and then this week has also been losses and break evens. So, you know, I was just kind of holding on for dear life probably. But, you know, it's something for me to kind of identify and look at in the future and try to improve on. All right, so moving on. So the next trade, which was actually this week, was NZDJPY. This was taken on the 4 hour time frame. It was a long position. It wasn't a typical type of setup, but it's something that I studied in the past, and I figured it was a valid trade. So it was based off of supply and demand theory, and it was also lucky. Well, it didn't work out, but it was also in the direction of the main trend, which is very rare for me to spot. So I was looking for that initial reaction off of the level, but the initial reaction was seen, but ultimately the level did not hold and trade was stopped out. So I'll just show you guys the trade at the time of entering. Cool. So we have this demand level just here where price tightens, and then we had that explosive move, right? So this is the level I was looking at, right? And then I'll just show you guys the trade at the time that it stopped out. Right, so on the very next candle, we just kind of had that impulse, just completely crashing through the level. Right, so I'll just jump to the chart now to walk you guys through the trade. So NZDJPY, H4 time frame. Okay, cool. So I'll talk about this trade as well, but I'll get to this one in a bit. Let me see. Actually, I can just do this. So this was the first trade here. All right, so I'll just get rid of this one for now. Cool. So this was the first trade just here. All right, so we had, this was the level I was looking at just here. So how I identify, this is a little bit messy the way I drew it in, but how I identify supply and demand is I look at the way that price moves, right? So if we see price kind of tightening just before an explosive move, I tend to look at the highest high of the tightening price. So if I just zoom in a little bit, and I tend to focus on body closures for supply and demand. I don't really take into consideration the wicks. So I look at the highest place that price closed before price breaks above, forming that impulsive move. So we have this as the tightening of price just here. This is the highest point of that range before the explosive move, just these two candles just here. And then price exploded out the move and never came back, right? So I looked at that level just for that initial reaction, right? And I'll just jump to the 1 hour time frame for this. So you can see here, just so as soon as price touched this level, that's when I entered. All right, so we see price spiked into the level and we got that reaction, right? But we didn't get an explosive reaction. We just had price kind of trickle along, bounced into the level. And really what you want to see when price comes back to quote unquote supply and demand level, you want to see price kind of react impulsively and skyrocket off of the level, right? And once I didn't see that, I should have closed the trade, but again, I just think my psychology was playing with me a little bit this week, and I was just kind of holding on for dear life with some of these trades. So yeah, so that was the idea behind the setup, and ultimately it didn't really play out, right? So this trade, unfortunately for me, stopped out. So you can see here just on this trade, which is another NZDJPY trade. This was a second attempt at the same sort of logic, right? It was a different level, but same sort of attempt, right? So since we're already on the chart, I'll just talk you guys through it. Okay, I'm back. I was able to retrieve my drawing. Took quite a bit of undoing to get the drawing back up. All right, so this was the second attempt at the level, right? So the way I approach this one, so for me, this is the demand level by my definition, right? How I've learned to trade supply and demand. So this is the demand level. But if you look at where the actual move started, right? The actual move started from this candle here, right? So this is the lowest point before this initial move began, right? So this is what I was looking at. So I just looked at this kind of W formation here. So we had this W formation here. Price broke above this level in the past, came back, retested it with this massive rejection. This massive rejection is the rejection that started this entire move. So this is the level I was looking at for that second entry, right? So the demand level for me is just here, based on that explanation I gave before. But this is the start of the move that created that demand level, right? So I looked at this level here, and once price got to it and I saw this kind of reaction, I thought, hey, you know what? Let me give this level a shot. Now this doesn't fit into any of my trading rules, but that logic is the logic that I kind of created for this trade opportunity. All right, and ultimately I decided to close the trade off just for that reason, right? So I'll close the trade off just here, right? So you'll see just here, as when price got to the level and respected it, I had an in-depth conversation with myself and decided, you know what, this isn't a trade I should be taking. I see the potential in it working out, but it's not a trade that I should be taking. So I decided to close the trade off, just to kind of manage risk and kind of stay in line with my trading rules, right? Even though yes, the trade did play out, and it would have been sitting in about maybe 1.5 hour right now. I don't know. Yeah, roughly 1.5 or 1.3, 1.4 hour. So it would be sitting in some decent profits right now, but it's all isn't lost for me with this trade. I would be looking for this to kind of pull back into that demand level, test of these highs just here, and probably look for that continuation. But yeah, I'll do some more analysis on this tomorrow in the outlook video. Okay, so the last trade here for me for the week was taken on GBPUSD on the H4 time frame. It was a long position. This is more my typical type of setup. So it's a break and retest of a previous daily level after some rejection, confluence of the trend line and zone. I also spotted some hidden divergence. Trade pinned out below the level, hitting the stop loss before pushing back above. Right, so this was the trade here at the time of entry. Right, so we have this nice structural trend line just here, pull back, broke above this kind of tightening of price just right here with this kind of consolidation. Price broke above, tried to come back and test it here, but then finally came back and tested it, confluence with the trend line and the zone. Right, so that was the trade at the time of entry, and then this was the trade at the time of untimely death. So you just had price had that initial rejection, price paused at the level, and then it just ultimately kind of crashed through the level, right? So I'll just jump to the chart here, GBPUSD. So you can see this trend line just here, confluence with that zone that I spoke about. We had price tried once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times before ultimately actually breaking above the level, and it never really came back to test it, right? So then it did come back to test it just here on this candle. This is the candle that got me interested, where it kind of spiked to the trend line together with the zone, and rejected straight away. Then it just pulled back into the level and it paused, right? It paused there just for a bit. Together with, if I just pull up, if I just go to the daily time frame and just pull up the RSI, if I can, there you go. So if we just compare, what was it? This low here. So we have this low here to this low here would have been a higher low. So you have very higher lows on price. But if you look on the RSI, you get your lower lows on price, right? So I kind of saw that hidden divergence being formed together with, if I just looked at the 1 hour time frame, you can see price just spiked into the level, rejected, and it came back right here and it just paused, right? And I should have probably waited just to see a bit more rejection here on the 1 hour time frame, but with the confluence of the trend line, the zone, and that hidden divergence being spotted, and plus we already had that nice rejection of the level, I thought we would have probably seen like a little double bottom formation here, and then see price kind of push above. I guess in hindsight, for me, I could have been a little bit more patient, just waiting for that additional rejection here on the H1 time frame, showing that confirmation that I wanted to see. But and even if if I just zoom in here just a little bit, you can see here just on that bearish candle that pushed price beneath the trend line, price ended up actually respecting and rejecting the trend line and pushing lower, right? Pushing lower, deeper into the zone. But I just kind of kept holding on, waiting, hoping that price would push back above, but that didn't happen, right? So I could have probably managed this trade just a little bit better, but at the same time, this is kind of one of my swing type setups, so I just tend to let these kind of play out, and what is to be will be. But I don't know, it's something I probably need to think a little bit more about, and maybe look to improve on in the future. Something I've also kind of been thinking about is just kind of waiting maybe on the just on like the 5-minute time frames or those lower time frames, if I've got the time, maybe just waiting for that kind of uptrend structure, just waiting for price to kind of get into the same structure as the higher time frames, right? Or at least the same sort of structure as I'm looking to trade in. So in this instance, it would be, if we look here on the 5-minute time frame, we would have price making this kind of structural lower highs, lower lows into the level, right? And this high here, this structural level here, that is the structural level upon breaking that would actually confirm for me the direction of the trade, right? So what I would have liked to see is price break above that, kind of retest it, and then start making higher highs and higher lows, right? And then, you know, anything can happen from that point because you're kind of already in the trade. So I'm kind of toying with the idea of waiting for that additional layer of confirmation, because if you just look here on the 5-minute time frame, you could quite clearly see it's in a downtrend, right? The 5-minute time frame is in a downtrend. So what I'd like to see once I get my entry trigger is to then see that confirmed switch of bias on the lower time frames before getting involved. I'm not sure if this is what I will be doing, but it's something I'm kind of paying some attention to. Equally, probably just managing the trade just a little bit better. All right. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. That kind of wraps up all the trades that I ended up taking. I'll just actually show you guys a couple of the analysis that actually did play out, but I wasn't able to get involved in. So one trade that I was looking at was AUDUSD. This would be in some good profit right now. So we had price. So I'll just actually jump to the daily time frame. So we had this structural low here on the daily time frame. This is the lowest point before this initial move started, right? So this point here started this massive impulsive move to the upside, and then price kind of slowly pulled back into the level. Even though we had this big bearish candle pulling into the level, I like to pay attention to how price is getting into a level, right? So if we just jump to the H4 time frame, so this is that exact low here on the H4 time frame, that daily low, that's the low just there. All right, so we have this zone here created by just kind of pulling price back here and encapsulating some of the bodies, some of the wicks, but I'm just mainly paying attention to that low that started this move. And then I just looked at how price was pulling into the level, right, forming this kind of descending channel. It's a little bit clearer on the 1 hour time frame. All right, so we have this kind of impulsive move here, which was on the daily time frame, shows that kind of big bearish candle, and then you have this slowing of price here on the 1 hour time frame. So once we had that these two touches, and then, you know, the channel was kind of confirmed by these two touches, all I looked for was that third touch into the trend line, right? So that would have been my entry trigger just here. It would have been an aggressive entry. But I didn't actually get the entry, unfortunately. I think I saw price when it was kind of around this level, so I think that would have been my entry candle just there, which would have thrown the risk to reward way off, right? I would have liked to enter right here where I've got the channel intersecting with that bottom, that low that I showed you guys in the past, right? So that would have been my entry just there. So I was kind of hoping we would kind of see a kind of like a double bottom situation here, but that didn't happen. So yeah, I missed this opportunity just there, and then I also missed, if I just look at, I think it's USDCHF. So this one would have played out nicely as well. I think this would have been in huge profit. So we had, I think based off I did an analysis right around this area, and I was looking for price to kind of pull into the trend line and respect the trend line, right? But what ended up happening is it pulled just a little bit deeper to test this trend line just here in confluence with this zone. And unfortunately I wasn't around the charts at this time here, because, you know, we have that kind of W formation that I like to see, the kind of double bottom. I mean, people call it all sorts of different things, right? But I like to see that kind of double bottom or W formation on an area of interest, right? So similar to how you kind of see it here, you have price come in, it kind of form that W formation, and it's always good, at least for me, it's always good to see the second part of the W either be higher than the initial base of the W, so here, so you kind of have it on a slant. If it's respecting the original trend line, then that's also really good. Same thing sort of happened here, right? You have the W here, so that's the bottom. It formed a higher bottom just there, and then price pushed on, right? Also respecting the trend line. And same things for M's, right? So you kind of have this M formation here. So I just like to see that the higher high followed by a lower high, respectation of the trend line. Then that for me is a nice move. And obviously the same goes for a bullish move, right? But yeah, so unfortunately I didn't get this entry, so this would have been my entry around this level just here. So I would have entered something like that, maybe after, even if I waited for that bullish engulfing candle just there, stops beneath the level. Initial targets would have been here, these previous highs, and then final targets would have probably been like these highs just here. All right, so that would have been a really nice trade for me, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get that set up. So yeah, anyway, so that kind of wraps up the week. We got a few more days in March just to kind of wrap up the month. So you know, I wouldn't really add on a 5th week. I'll just kind of tag on to the 4th week if I do end up catching any trades next week to kind of wrap up the month. So yeah, I mean, not the greatest couple of weeks in the market for me. It's just been really slow, breaking my rules here and there. So you know, it's been a kind of rough month for me last couple of weeks. It started really good, you know, started the month really good, but you know, it kind of tailed off as the market kind of moved into this kind of massive correction and consolidation phase. So these things happen. You can't expect to be on the top all the time. So anyway, that kind of wraps up the video here for me. As usual, if you guys made it this far, and thank you for watching. And if you're not subscribed, feel free to subscribe. And obviously, if you think this video will be useful for anybody that's interested in trading or learning to trade, or just interested in the way that I might trade, then you know, feel free to share. All right, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.